All right, we're going to call to order the June 13th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting. Roll call.
Chair Simpson.
Here.
Vice Chair Griffin.
Here.
Commissioner Kai.
Here.
Commissioner Matzinger.
Here.
And Commissioners Walker, Reddick, and Flores are absent.
Thank you very much. We have with us, or on the agenda, a consent agenda, which is the May 9th and the May 23rd Planning Commission minutes. And the May 9th were in our packet. The May 23rd were emailed to us. Did everybody have an opportunity to read those? Do we have a
Yes.
motion? Do we have a motion?
I have a change I'd like to make.
All right.
This would be packet page 13. This is minutes from the June 13 Planning Commission meeting. Second paragraph, third time we see Vice Chair Griffin speak. He spoke a lot that night. Vice Chair Griffin suggested a more serpentine walkway instead of linear. I actually recall I suggested a more serpentine effect on the landscaping. I don't know that I specified the walkway being
Yes,
serpentine. You recall that?
Yes, that is what you
Yeah,
said.
I mean, the walkway is what the walkway is, but I think it was the landscaping to have maybe a curved edge to the edge of the grass was what I was thinking.
Yes.
That is the only change I have.
Are there any other corrections? Is there a motion
I move.
that we approve
Sorry.
the agenda as amended?
So moved.
All right.
Can I second that?
Yes,
Second.
absolutely.
I second.
All right. We are going to now vote on the approval of the consent agenda as modified. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Council liaison announcements.
I really have nothing for tonight. Thanks.
Well, welcome for coming. I hope you have an opportunity to stay and see the whole meeting as
Here
a,
for the evening, yes.
all
absolutely.
right. We are an entertaining group, if nothing else. All right. Staff announcements.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I am delighted, beyond delighted, to announce that we are currently fully staffed in the Planning Department.
For how many?
Well, for right now, we are currently fully staffed, and I am overjoyed. With us tonight, we have Joy Chang, and I'm going to have her wave to you. She is our new associate planner that will be handling the full caseload of all of our current planning reviews. So applications that come before you and staff level reviews, everything is going to fall in Joy's lap. Joy comes to us from the city of Portland and Washington County and has more than 20 years experience in a variety of planning capacities in both current and long-range planning. So we are just delighted that she is here and she's jumped in. She's been here for 2 weeks and she's jumped in and getting acclimated. The other planner that we've hired is not here tonight, but she will be here at hopefully our next meeting, is Carrie Brunnicke. And we have hired her as our senior planner, and she will primarily be devoted to long-range planning and working on our comprehensive plan update. As you know, when I originally came back in August to do the comp plan update, I was charged with both current planning and long-range, and our current planning workload was so heavy that it left little time to do the long-range and to do the comp plan update. So we are trying very hard with these two new hires to keep one current planning and one focused on the long-range, the comp plan update, so that we can address that goal that you guys have as well as City Council has. Carrie comes to us from the former city of Damascus and has a lot of planning experience doing multiple comprehensive plans and public outreach, extensive public outreach in that area. The other announcement that I have, I will formally announce that I will be leaving as of July 12th and we'll be moving to the Chicago area. So a big move. I'm choosing to stay married as opposed to stay planning manager. Not that I don't love this job, because I do, but it was a very difficult choice for our family. My husband just has a really great opportunity, so we will be sadly leaving Sherwood.
Maybe you could commute.
If I could telecommute, I would totally do that. Come back twice a month.
Challenge.
We will definitely miss you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
On that note, and yes, she will definitely be missed. We're lucky that she was able to give us lots and lots of notice. So we actually have already opened that recruitment up. It closes in a week or two, and so hopefully there won't be a huge gap, and you guys will just get to deal with me a little bit more than you normally do until we hire somebody on to be our full-time plant manager again.
And the only other announcement I have is we do not have any items scheduled for June 27th or July 11th at this time. So it looks like you're free for the next month or so, and possibly we'll have something in late July.
And actually, I was going to add, so you will not have anything July 11th because the council is actually merging their 2 meetings in July into one on July 11th. So you won't be able to meet because there won't be a room to meet in. But I do have currently planning, I'm hoping to utilize you to help me facilitate public input on the tannery site. The consultants will have developed some alternative brownfield cleanup options, and we want to get public input on those. And so what we're thinking about utilizing is the public work session format, and you hopefully helping us facilitate conversations to get input from the public on that. And we're planning on doing that July 25th. More information to come on that later, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that we are hoping to utilize you and your great facilitation skills that you are continuing to hone through the public work sessions.
So can I ask a question? Don't know if we're done. So on those work sessions, we had a work session with the school district, and I know that whole project is fast-tracked. Is there any expectation that within this next month that we will be having any work sessions related to that fast-tracked project?
Not currently.
Okay.
Not within the month of June or July, no.
Okay, I had that on as one of the, hey, are we doing anything yet with that, so. All right, any other staff announcements?
I think that's it for now.
All right, right now we move into community comments. Community comments are limited to those items that are not already on the agenda. If you wish to speak tonight on a matter that's not on the agenda already, we ask you to turn in a blue card and note that it's for the community comments. I do not have any. Also, if you wish to testify for the hearing that we're going to be having this evening, I would ask that you fill out a blue card and turn it in to a staff member at the table over here. Kirsten, if you can get to her, or anybody else at the table on the way. Also, in the back of the room, there's a sign-up sheet that when you sign up, you are, it's an option to join an interested parties list so that you can receive notices for ongoing planning issues in the community. So if you want to know other things that are happening, like our comprehensive plan that we've mentioned a couple times tonight, you need to sign up for the interested parties list so you know what's happening in the planning world in Sherwood. Now I'm going to look for a piece of paper that may or may not be up here. That's okay, because I'll look a lot more intelligent when this piece of paper arrives.
Chair Simpson, if I could interrupt you, I've lied, and I do have one more announcement.
Oh, good, thank you. No, I like the
So while
delay.
they're looking for that, I will make another announcement. We currently have a planning commission vacancy that will be open
yes.
as of July 1st. And so if there's anyone that is watching us tonight or is here in the audience and is interested in serving on the planning commission, we will have a vacancy that is open, and it's a 4-year term. And we, as the chairman mentioned earlier, are a fun group and meet twice monthly to talk about land use issues in the city. If there's anything else you want to add about the planning commission, encourage people to apply.
Over the next 3 years, we will be working on the comprehensive plan, which will help shape the future of the city of Sherwood. So if you have any desire to see how your community is going to be looking, the comprehensive plan is either through a citizens committee that is just for the comprehensive plan. It's a separate committee from the planning commission, or it will be coming before the planning commission and then to city council. This is the time in our community's future, which will be our history very soon. And we are working from a historical document that was created in 1991. And so it's time for a comprehensive plan update, and that's what this lot of buzz is going to be about here in planning for the next 3 years or so. So anyway, that being said, we will move on to new business. And we have before us tonight the public hearing on SP 1609 CUP 1604 Oregon Street Townhomes is called to order. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report up to 15 minutes. Questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. Applicant will have 30 minutes that will be split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each. The rebuttal from the applicant is the remainder of their 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing, and no other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant. There'll be final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and discussion by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the blue testimony forms and submit it to the Planning Commission Secretary. The chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come forward to speak, please state your name and address for the record. Also make sure that the green light on the microphone is turned on. If it's off, you need to hold it down for 2 to 3 seconds until it turns green. In reaching a decision on the application, the commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. There are 2 copies of the staff report available in the room this evening. The testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I would like to ask members of the commission to discuss any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing.
I would like to state that I live near the site, the proposed development, but Mr. Fisher and I aren't close friends. I know Mr. Fisher, but because I see him across the street, used to see him across the street all the time, but that won't affect my decision tonight at all. So,
Thank you. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any Planning Commission member's ability to participate this evening? And for the purposes of this hearing, the Planning Commission will make the decision, and if there is any appeal, it will be appealed to the City Council. So we will now have the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Simpson.
Or Lafayette.
I stumble over my words. The matter before the Planning Commission this evening is a request for site plan and conditional use permit approval for a 25-unit townhome development along the southeastern side of Oregon Street in Old Town. To orient you, the site is located directly behind us on a 1.2-acre site. On the south and east are the railroad tracks and the Cannery Square PUD area. To the north are single-family homes in the Spring Senior Living Facility and the new Assembly of God Church. And to the west is City Hall, where we're sitting now.
So can everybody hear her clearly?
You
All
all
right,
hear me?
good. Yep, we're
Okay.
good.
All right. The site is located within the Old Town Overlay District and is zoned retail commercial. Further, the site is located in the Old Cannery area of Old Town, with the shaded area here representing Smockville and the non-shaded area Old Cannery. This is important because townhomes are allowed on property zoned retail commercial in the Old Cannery area of the Old Town Overlay with a conditional use permit. Hence, that's why you've got a conditional use permit application in front of you this evening. Additionally, the site is being proposed to develop as a condominium platted townhomes, which means when we process it, is processed as a site plan as opposed to a subdivision, where subdivisions would be platted units on individual lots that are attached on the common property line. condominiums are processed as a site plan with its one parent lot, and then condo platted the units above that lot. The project is being proposed to be constructed in 2 phases. So I'm going to talk about the first phase to ensure that each phase of the development meets the applicable code standards. So what I'm going to talk about first is what we're going to see for the site and landscaping in phase 1. So the site features 17 units in 4 townhome blocks. And if you can see the color differentiation, those buildings are identified in different colors because they have different elevations, which I will talk about later in the presentation. There are 26 parking spaces that are provided, 23 are required. It is important to note that the townhome section of code requires 2 parking spaces per unit, which would normally mean we would have 34 parking spaces required on a townhome development. However, being located in the Old Town Overlay, the Old Town Overlay caps the required parking at 65% of what would normally be required. So within this first phase, 23 would normally be required. The applicant is proposing 26, exceeding what would normally be required. 18 of those spaces will be standard spaces and 8 will be compact. The site is proposing 13% open space. Townhome projects are required to provide 5% open space, so the applicant is exceeding the required open space for this first phase. Staff does have a condition of approval in the staff report requiring for the final site plan to delineate the open space in square footage as well as percent of total space so that we can ensure that the required amount is provided. Finally, the site features appropriate landscaping consistent with code and the Old Town Overlay standards. As you can see, there is a diverse variety of trees, ground cover, and shrubs that are being proposed for the site. When we move on to full build-out of the site, again, we are going to be seeing 25 units in 6 townhome blocks. And again, those colors matter. Building 1 and 4 will be similar in elevations, and buildings 2 and 3 will be similar. Buildings 5 and 6 that are set back from the road will have unique elevations for those as well. 50 parking spaces are provided. Normally 50 parking spaces would be required if this were a townhome development in any other part of the city. However, with the Old Town Overlay, only 33 are required. So they are certainly exceeding what would normally be required. 28 standard spaces and 22 compact spaces. The site features 18% open space and appropriate site landscaping, including the retention of the stand of trees that are on the northern side of the site that we see today. The site also features a future commercial pad. The site has 2 points of access. One is the existing off of Oregon Street on this side that served phase 1. A new driveway entrance will be provided at the westerly end of the site. This site will be the only new driveway allowed. So if this future commercial pad were to develop, it would, 1, be required to come back to the Planning Commission for site plan review and approval, but 2, it would not be allowed to have another driveway access onto Oregon Street. It would require to take access from this private drive that is provided here. As you can see, that's 2 properties currently. Prior to phase 2 being built out, the applicant will be required to do a property line adjustment or a lot consolidation with phase 2. The main issue is that property line splits building 3, and we can't have property line split buildings unless you have a firewall where that property line is, and the configuration of that building where it sits is not going to facilitate a firewall in that particular location, so they will need to clean that up prior to construction of phase 2. Proposed street improvements. There is a section of Oregon Street. Mr. Fisher's site has been reduced over time for the development of Oregon Street, and I think he may talk about that when he comes up to talk. But he has given part of his property to the city for the development of Oregon Street. With this development, when they start the phase 2 construction, they will be correcting a bump that is currently in Oregon Street, which I am told is problematic or can be problematic. So we're going to straighten that out and smooth that. They will be reconstructing the sidewalk and, and adding relocating the streetlights out of the sidewalk. Additionally, there's a condition of approval for the site to add street trees and tree wells in this new constructed sidewalk area. And that is consistent with what we see in Old Town. If you're familiar, we just did a sidewalk repair program and replacement where we put the tree wells in for street trees in Old Town. Finally, to look at the proposed building elevations, and I'm going to talk primarily about the buildings that are along Oregon Street, as they're the ones that we will primarily be seeing from the street and from the public right-of-way. So the building height features 31 feet 8 inches tall. 50 feet is allowed in the old cannery area in Old Town on retail commercial properties, so they are well under the allowed height. The block width is ranging from 76 to 95 feet. They're limited to up to 150 feet, so they were well within the block width. They have 4 and 5 units per block. Code requires the townhome blocks to be between 2 at a minimum and 6 units at a maximum. So they are meeting that standard as well. Code requires townhomes in the RC or in the HDR zone, which is what they are subject to be a minimum of 1,200 square feet in size. And the units as proposed range from 1,372 to 1,751 square feet. Code requires that the development look like distinct units, distinct townhome units, and I think they've achieved this with the variety of colors and materials that are shown here. The homes front onto the public street with garage access in the rear. There are distinct and varied roof lines that are shown. There are multiple building materials and colors that are used throughout. They have covered porches and balconies on all units, and I really want to point out and commend the applicant for doing a great job at providing four-sided architecture. We don't always see this in our developments, and it certainly is not required by code, but I think they've done a great job, as you can see, by wrapping treatment around the sides and also to the back of the building that isn't even facing the public view. It's facing internally to the site, and in other buildings it's facing the railroad corridor. So I think they've done a really good job at wrapping the stone all the way around and taking that extra time and potential expense to treat the building well. They've provided pedestrian scale at the first floor with the stone and the banding between the first and second stories. And they've got window trim on all windows. That's a requirement in Old Town, that we don't just have windows that are flush against the building. And they've not only done that again on the front-facing facades, but they've done it on the sides and rear of the building as well. So this is what buildings 1 and 4 look like. Buildings 2 and 3 are slightly different. They have different pitch. They have different ways that the balconies are covered, and those are treated to provide some variation, that we're not just seeing the same building over and over. And I just wanted to show what those two buildings look like adjacent to each other on Oregon Street and what we might be seeing. Site plan required findings. As demonstrated in the staff report, with the approval of a conditional use permit, the applicant will meet the applicable zoning district and design standards. Public water, sanitary sewer, and storm service are available to the site and are required, and there are conditions to require the extension to the site. Conditions, covenants, restrictions, and a homeowners association agreement are required with the final site plan. Because this is going to be condominium platted, we want to ensure that the common areas are maintained and that those private driveways are maintained, and to delineate who's responsible for those maintenance and how that happens. So that is why those are required. Just to clarify to the public, anyone watching the Planning Commission, the city does not enforce CC&Rs. We do require that those things are done so that in the future, if something happens, there is a document that is recorded and addresses those maintenance responsibilities, but we don't enforce CC&Rs. There are no significant natural features on site that need to be protected. It's estimated to generate 145 daily trips, which is well below our threshold to have to do a traffic analysis. Anticipating that there could be concern about traffic and what this will do in Old Town, we did take a look at some past traffic studies and found that these 145 daily trips would increase the average daily trips in that particular area by about 2%. So it's very minimal, the amount of traffic that this proposal will generate. The commercial and industrial design standards are not applicable, but the building does conform to the Old Town design standards as demonstrated in the staff report. There are no existing or planned driveways that exceed 24 feet in width, so condition 8 is not applicable. Moving on to the conditional use required findings. Again, public facilities and services are available. The applicable zoning standards are met or will be met with the approval of the conditional use permit. The proposed facility meets the overall needs of the community. And I just want to highlight a couple points to this one. Specifically, the Sherwood Town Center Plan, the proposal is consistent with that in that the Town Center Plan seeks future residential growth, economic development, and public investment in Sherwood Town Center will enhance urban vibrancy, encourage active transportation, and improve safety and efficiency for all modes of traffic. By having townhomes and people living downtown, it will support the businesses that are here, and they will be able to make those trips on foot or bicycle as opposed to needing to get in their car and drive to events that are downtown, to the library, to restaurants and businesses. Additionally, Chapter 4 of the comprehensive plan seeks to locate land uses to minimize the adverse effects of one another, to provide convenient and energy efficient movement of people, vehicles, and goods within and among the major land use categories, and to minimize the adverse effects of human activity on the natural environment. The proposal also supports the plan's desire to promote a diverse mix of housing types. The surrounding properties will not be adversely affected. It is compatible with the proposed senior living facility expansion that is proposed just north of the site and is consistent with supporting the businesses in the Old Town area. The site is adequate shape and size, although some may argue it's a very unusual size, that it is very long and linear and narrows to a point at one end and has been reduced in size to accommodate the need for the public roadway over time. So I think they've found a very creative way to utilize the site. It will not result in likely adverse impacts to sensitive wildlife species or the natural environment. And it is not a wireless communication facility or transportation facility improvement. With that, staff does recommend approval in accordance with the conditions of approval, and I wanted to point out one correction to the conditions of approval, and that is in the memo that I handed out tonight. In an earlier phase of this project, the applicant was considering multifamily, and at that time, multifamily requires ADA accessible parking, and they were having connectivity between the public or their private drive aisles and their private pedestrian pathways to the ADA parking, and they forgot to correct their narrative when they revised it to propose the townhome development, which is single-family attached residential. So staff had pointed out that they said they were going to be proposing the marked crosswalks and just said that they needed to provide them with the final site plan, and they called us and said, nope, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have put that in there. So I'm proposing a correction to the staff analysis and the findings that that marked crosswalk would not normally be required in a single-family development. They're not required to provide ADA spaces for single-family homes, and therefore it's not needed. There are a couple other typos and corrections that are noted in that. I apologize, I don't know why page 3 printed black and white and not in color, but the underlined information is added and the stricken information is being deleted, and that is mainly correcting some citations of code and a typo and correct dates for exhibits.
So are you removing Exhibit E?
No, that is, if you will see on the other pages, there's this nice red line across it. I don't know what is up with our printer, but for some reason, it printed a line all the way across that. So no,
I see
it is
it printed
not
on
being
page-
stricken. It just happens to be in the right location to look like it is, and is not. Thank
Okay.
you for that correction.
Got it. All right.
And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Does anybody have any questions of staff before we call the applicant up?
I had, within the packet, it talked a decent amount about water and water use. I was just curious, will each unit have its own water meter
I believe so, but that will be a question better answered by the applicant. Usually if there's condominium units, we would expect there to be
Okay.
individual water meters,
Okay.
but they can address how they propose to do those connections.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was a requirement from the city side, so.
We would have that metered somehow.
Yeah.
How they fill that would, but typically if you were a condo platting something, we would expect individual meters to individual units.
Any other questions of staff before we go? All right. Then I have 3 blue cards noted as applicant. So as staff closes up their presentation, who's ever ready to come up for the applicant presentation, before you start, we'll just have you give your name and address for the record.
Can you all see what's being projected on the screen on yours?
Yeah, we have monitors.
Excellent. Well, good evening. My name is Zach Pels. I'm a land use planner with AKS Engineering and Forestry. We're located right down the road in Tualatin. I'm joined tonight by Jim Fisher, who is the applicant, and a couple other members of our project team. John Christensen is our project engineer, and Sinan Gumsalo is our project architect. Before I jump into it, I would like to say thank you for all of your time in reviewing the application. We know it was pretty lengthy, so I appreciate you spending time looking through that. And I really would like to thank Connie for an excellent job in her presentation, and also for all the help throughout the application. She's been really helpful in answering questions and being available to meet with us as we've gone through the process to answer questions that we've had. So just want to say thank you for that. That's much appreciated. And it always helps things go a lot more smoothly. So because Connie did such an excellent job, we don't really have to spend a lot of time rehashing the typical things that we need to do to get you familiar with the project. So we'll go through it pretty quickly. If you need to stop me, feel free to do that. I think we have some 3D renderings that Connie didn't show you that we'll probably spend the majority of our time looking at, showing you how we think the architecture on our site complements the surrounding area and is a good fit for this site in the context of existing and planned development. So probably won't need 15 minutes to go through that. We'll give you a little background on the project. Jim will give you a little history of the site, talk just real briefly about the existing conditions. We'll talk probably more briefly about the project itself because Connie did such a fantastic job. Talk about the criteria and then be happy to answer any questions you may have. So with that, I'm going to just hand it over quickly to Jim Fisher, who is the applicant, to give you a little history of the site.
Well, thank you. I'd like to introduce myself as Jim Fisher, and my wife, if she'll raise her hand, Jackie Fisher, is here tonight. And I would just like to, again, thank Connie and the planning department for all their hard work on this. She's been excellent to work with, and I don't know how you guys all feel, but it's going to be a big loss when she leaves the city. And I also want to thank all of you for serving as planners and being here tonight, and for making Sherwood a great place to live. I know a little bit about Sherwood. I started my business here, right here, where we're sitting tonight, and actually didn't start it, but I moved it here in 1983. I feel a little bad because somebody said something about historical thing, 90-something. I'm going, uh-oh. So I guess it's historical. But we started here. We had a sublease from Sherwood Lumberyard in 1983. And in 1985, we purchased the property that we're proposing to build these townhomes on from Southern Pacific Railroad. And through that, we built the buildings in 1986, and we owned and operated Jim Fisher Roofing there until July 1st, 2008, at which time we sold the company to 2 of our employees and built them a new complex over on Galbraith, choosing to stay in Sherwood because we like this community so well. Personally, I've been involved with Old Town Sherwood for many years. I served on SERPAC when they first received those funds, and that was an exciting time for the city. I've been very active in the chamber, and I've been able to watch Sherwood grow to the community it is today. So part of that, and the reason I'm mentioning this, is that what we've designed and built here, I really feel like, we understand Old Town Sherwood and the history here, and feel like this project is going to fit well with that. Actually, Zach pointed out 2 days ago that, and I knew Sherwood had made it one time. I didn't realize Sherwood had made it twice as the top 50 places in the U.S. to live. And that's pretty exciting. And I think really with that, a big thank you has to go out to all of you here, because that's the reason, you guys are the reason that this happens. We feel like the Oregon Street Townhomes is the right fit for Old Town Sherwood. It will only enhance the livability of an already vibrant Old Town community. With the walkway ending right at our entrance, this is going to allow the families in our facilities to walk to Old Town or ride their bikes and visit the shops, restaurants, stores, and just be a big part of the culture of Sherwood. And there's a few amenities in the townhomes that I'd like to kind of point out, and I feel a little bit bad because most of them have already been pointed out. I think Connie hit most of these points. I got a few she didn't hit, though, but we've met 170% of the open space requirement. And I think that's huge in today's market when real estate's so expensive. We're at 150% of the parking, with every unit having a attached garage. We will have a playground for the families and children to be at and use. We're going to have a garden spot with raised beds, outside picnic area. Each unit will have their own personal patio on the ground floor and decks on the second floor out of the living room. And really with this said, I just want to thank you guys all again and turn it back over to Zach and let him go over to all the details.
All right, thank you, Jim. And before I go on any further, I have to apologize for this font up on the screen. That is not the font I chose, just for the record. That's really bugging me, just so you know. So thanks, Jim, and again, thanks for your patience with that poor font choice. So let's take a quick look at, again, where we're at. Here's the subject site in this yellow dash line. We're just right behind you, right on the other side of the City Hall parking lot is our site, right off of Oregon Street, just west of the Oregon Pacific Rail right-of-way. There's an excellent network of existing streets and sidewalks that serve the site, including the pedestrian promenade, which provides a direct connection between Old Town Sherwood and our site, so it's really an ideal setup. In addition to that, there's a good mix of commercial, civic uses, and residential uses right in the immediate vicinity. I haven't shown the Springs property up here, but you can see with the inclusion of our townhouse project, we'll just be continuing that existing pattern of these mixed complementary uses in this area, all served by an excellent network of transportation facilities. Here's another look at the site looking to the southeast at kind of an oblique view. It's a little bit hard to see on this screen, but maybe you can see it on your screens a little bit better. But there's 3 buildings currently located on the existing site. There's a building on the south end. Towards the middle of the site, there's a couple more buildings. Those would all be demolished as part of the development. They're currently used for landscaping business and outdoor storage. Again, the majority of the site, as your staff pointed out, is a large expanse of asphalt, and that kind of served that sort of quasi-industrial use since the 80s, like Jim mentioned. But you can see again, there's a kind of a mix of civic. The City of Sherwood's Public Works Yard is actually right on the other side of the railroad right away there. Cannery Square Park, Sherwood Center for the Arts, Sherwood Civic Center, et cetera. I'm not going to spend really any time going through this. Again, we've got 25 townhouse units. I will point out that the units are actually slightly larger than Connie mentioned. We made one small change kind of at the 11th hour to the site plan to add some articulation on that 3rd floor, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But we increased the square footage of the 3rd floor units, and that bumped the total square footage up by about 1,000 square feet, I guess. So they're just under 1,900 square feet for the larger units. So The two-bedroom units, they all have a flexible space in the ground floor. Will be between 1,350 and just under 1,900 total square feet. Again, Connie talked about the landscaping. We've got ample landscaping, open space, and off-street parking. So let's take a minute to look at some 3D renderings that we've prepared of the buildings to show, again, how we think the site really complements not just the existing development in the area and the planned development in the area, but also the city's objectives for the architectural style in this part of the Old Town. So we have added a number of architectural features to really be consistent with the requirements for townhomes in the city of Sherwood and in the Old Town overlay district, including a strong vertical orientation. You can see that through the use of different types of siding materials and orientations, different colors of the units, various roof forms and articulations. It really helps distinguish a townhome unit from the next. And that's just kind of one view of that. This next, I guess this series of slides is just going to be views of these 3D renderings from different perspectives throughout the site. So here's a view, kind of a bird's eye view of the site looking to the northeast. Again, you can see sort of how these units fronting Oregon Street will really help frame that pedestrian realm and help kind of create a nice, attractive and inviting streetscape for not just pedestrians but also motorists as they enter into Sherwood's Old Town. It creates a nice gateway into Old Town Sherwood to help kind of welcome people as they enter and, I guess, exit the area. But you can also see in this image how nicely these units located off of Oregon Street will also fit within the context of the site. Here's another view just looking almost directly east, probably just a little bit to the southeast. Again, showing how the units fit within the streetscape and how they can help create that inviting pedestrian space. Another view looking north from a pedestrian's vantage point. Again, you can see there's first floor kind of stoops and second floor balconies really help add interest and, again, create a little bit of outdoor open space for residents of those units as well, and kind of helps create that third space, as some people call it, where it opens up opportunities for interaction between residents in that area and people walking by, and helps kind of promotes social interaction. Another view looking from the pedestrian promenade that currently exists. These units will just set back just slightly off of that promenade and, again, create an attractive pedestrian realm. Another view from that same perspective. So we'll kind of wrap it up by just, again, Connie did a good job of talking about all the applicable criteria. Because it is a conditional use, I do want to hit a little bit on some of those discretionary criteria that you have in making your decision tonight. Specifically, we think there are 4 questions that you have to ask in approving a conditional use. So the first one is, are there adequate public facilities to serve the proposed use? We think your staff has done a good job of pointing out how those do exist or can be made to exist with the conditions of approval that were recommended. Is the proposed use compatible with abutting uses? We think we've talked about that a lot, and we think we, along with your staff, have done a good job of preparing an application that has become compatible with the existing uses and, again, the city's objectives for development in this area going forward. I'll spend a little bit more time talking about how the proposal meets the needs of the community. I think that's a big one. And then we feel that any impacts to the environment are mitigated. As was stated by your staff, also, there's not really any environmental resources on site to impact, and our application and your staff report talks about that. So, again, I'll just touch on this. Your staff pointed out very well there are really 2 big policy considerations that come from your comprehensive plan. One is from the Sherwood Town Center Plan, and it talks about future residential growth in this area, promoting economic development, encouraging public investment in the town center, and enhancing urban vibrancy, encouraging active transportation, and improving safety and efficiency for all modes of transportation. Again, we feel that the proximity of these townhome units to Sherwood's Old Town really will help put people in proximity to businesses and services that are in this area, and really kind of creates a good synergy to continue investment in Sherwood's Old Town. So we think that is exactly met with the location of this development. The comprehensive plan, Chapter 4 policy listed here is really similar, and it's similar to a lot of things we talked about, so I won't repeat that, but it talks about just kind of minimizing impacts and making the use complementary with existing development patterns. So again, we feel that the proposal does a really good job of creating opportunities for an even more walkable and even more vibrant Old Town in Sherwood. And to kind of support this, I've kind of took a snippet of Sherwood's Main Street map to show just the range of services and uses that are just within just a short walk of the proposed use, so you can see sort of what's here and what residents in this new development will be able to enjoy, and also what businesses will be benefited by these new residents here. So there's a number of restaurants and bars currently located in the area. Those are in the orange dots. There are shopping opportunities. There are cultural opportunities. There's the Sherwood Center for the Arts and other art galleries located in Sherwood's Old Town. There's hair salons and spas. Schools and daycares are located nearby, all to serve future residents of this proposed development. There's medical and dental offices as well. So there's really a full range of services that are currently here that can benefit future residents in this area, and also be benefited by the investment that's made from residents in this area. And on top of that, and as Jim mentioned, Sherwood is continually receiving accolades for being such a great place to live. It's grown over 50% between 2000 and 2016. It's got fantastic schools. There's more and more reasons why people want to continue to move to Sherwood, and we think this type of development provides sort of an alternative to the typical single-family detached home that many developers are building these days, and helps really satisfy some of the demand that exists out there for a different type of housing stock. And we think for that reason, it meets the needs of your city, and it's a perfect, and I would say probably ideal fit for this site in Sherwood's Old Town. And for that reason, we respectfully request that you approve the application tonight, and we are happy to respond to any questions you might have. Thank you.
So my first question officially is, with the revised conditions of approval, do you accept, before we have any deliberation, what's currently been proposed by staff?
We do. We are in full acceptance of the revised conditions of approval as stated by our staff.
I'm not saying that we can't change them in the next 10 minutes, but just based on what,
Yep.
again,
No.
we're a fun group, but just saying what's been presented. I know that you, as an applicant, had some concerns and staff addressed them, and
Yep.
so that you feel they were addressed.
We do. Yeah. And again, we appreciate your staff being so open to these 11th hour revisions and discussions, and we appreciate the communication back and forth. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions of the applicant before we call, yes?
I had 3 questions, maybe more out of curiosity than fact, but how far from the railroad tracks is the back of the rear building?
Yeah, actually, I believe that's a good question, and I might have to call John Christensen, the project engineer up here. But I believe we're 2 feet off of the rear property line. We're set back 2 feet off the rear property line.
And then anything for consideration on those rear-facing units for the sound or vibration?
Pardon me, would you mind
Is there any
repeating?
consideration made into the buildings for the sound or vibration on the rear-facing units?
To mitigate any potential vibrations from the trains themselves
Yeah,
as
the
they move
sound.
by.
There's
I
a
don't
crossing
believe
right there, too.
we have included any additional sound mitigation strategies into the buildings themselves at this point.
Okay, and then the rear fencing is just, it's not a sound wall, right? It's just vertical
Correct.
slat?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any questions before we? For rebuttal? Yeah. I want to see if any other people testifying have questions too, so.
So I'll just ask, I'll just ask my prior question and then.
Okay, yeah,
in addition,
that's
if
a
all right.
good point.
So as I asked Connie, I was just curious, will each unit have its own individual water meter?
At this point, we don't know whether or not they'll have individual water meters or a shared water meter. I think we do have, because they're condos, we do have the option to go either way. And there's some pros and cons with either approach. And at this point, again, we don't know if we'll do kind of a banked individual water meter system or if we'll just do a single large water meter that they'll split service from.
So from that answer, I'm just curious, staff, if it's a shared system, in terms of billing, that still goes up and down with usage, right?
If I'm correct, you're saying that the water usage rate would impact everything equally, or?
Yeah, because I know oftentimes in shared situations, individuals don't receive a bill. Usually it's bundled into their, most likely HOA cost, which doesn't fluctuate with usage. And I was just curious how we handle that from
From the city standpoint, we bill whoever owns the meter set. I have seen instances, mostly on commercial, where the building owner will bill a tenant who has a higher water usage, a larger proportionate share. This is all residential. So I don't know. I don't see any one unit actually having greater water usage than another unit. But again, if they're dealing a ganged meter set, not master metered, basically if they have each individual meter set, then it's no question they pay for what they use. If they have a master meter for the, say, a bank of 4 units, they could submeter the units, and then they could still say, at that point, they could do a proportionate share based on the actual readings that they get off of it. But whatever the meter is using, that's what we bill.
Okay. And then for the applicant, and I just want to make sure I understand. So these are intended as for purchase in individual units, correct?
At this point, we haven't made a final determination on that. I think at this point, the applicant is intending to retain ownership of all the units, but they will be, per the city's requirements, they will be condominium units.
So, and staff, you might need to clarify. So as condominium units, I understand that they're all on their own, or I understand that they're all they will all be on a single lot.
No.
No?
Condominium is not, which is what I talked about when I clarified at the beginning. If you condo plat, there's a parent lot that the units are on, and it's treated as a site plan. The other option is to do individual lots, and then you just have them joined on a common wall at the property line. So they're proposing condominium, so it's treated as a site plan, so it's all on one parent lot, which is why we have the requirement for CC&Rs and an HOA to clarify maintenance responsibilities and all of that, so that is addressed for that common area, because the driveways will be private driveways, will need to be owned and maintained by whoever owns the property or owns those condominium units. The open space will need to be maintained. All of that will need to be outlined and addressed. In terms of ownership, we require per code that townhomes are defined as single-family attached products, and they're written in a way that they either need to be platted on individual lots or condominium platted to ensure that there's that ownership. We do not regulate people renting out their individual single-family homes. So there is no requirement, and we have no jurisdiction or authority to tell him you have to sell each of these lots, or you can't rent them, as someone who rents a single-family home in the town right now.
So just a clarification. So if, for example, one of those units were for sale, the person purchases the condominium unit, they purchase, if they're on an end unit, 3 walls and half of the common wall with no ground outside,
Right,
correct?
typically what they're purchasing is the building space. They're not purchasing the land.
And then that's interesting, because would they be purchasing the exterior, because that would be probably a common area, so that,
That's correct. That's correct.
so
it's
they're
basically-
purchasing the inside
Yeah.
of the
And
building.
in fact, we will prepare, as part of the condominium plat, we will prepare a legal description for the boundaries of that building itself, and that is what you're buying. So we have to legally describe what you are purchasing. But then, in addition to that, there's a shared common space which these units sit on top of, and so that's split amongst the 25 units that are located on the site. So it's a little bit different from your standard subdivision setup, but it's kind of some of the same principles apply, I guess, as far as ownership is concerned.
But are they purchasing the exterior and roof, or just the interiors?
I mean,
I think they purchased just the interior, because the exterior and the roofs are the common areas.
That's right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Understood.
And then, so because it's condo platted, if it were ownership, each one would just be taxed individually, because and the condo plat allows for that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to chime in. So the condo plat is essentially a platting process, and if you look at the tax assessor's maps, it will have this common open area and then sort of just squares on the map. And people that own a condo are taxed based on the space that they have in a condo plat. And another example, which is even more complex, is over at Hunter's Ridge, where they've condo platted multiple stories. And so this is going to be fairly easy to see on a tax assessor's map, because it's just going to be a square. But sometimes you can condo plat multiple stories and multiple units within those stories, and it's all just sort of shown on the tax assessor's map, and you know what your legal description is, and you're taxed accordingly.
Another quick question. Going from light industrial to residential, is there any remediation or anything that is necessary switching from one use to the other?
As far as we're aware, there's no sort of environmental contaminants or anything like that. If that's sort of what you're asking, nope. It should be actually. There's a. I think it's a pretty good setup, just considering that the site is relatively vacant, right? I mean, so it's a pretty good development site to move forward with fairly quickly.
Great, thank you.
All right. We have, appears 13 minutes and 55 seconds for rebuttal, and I have. So, top of the list is Larry Purcell. And I should have made a disclaimer at the beginning that I got 4 names. I'll probably mispronounce all 4 of them. So I'm notorious for bad pronunciation on names.
So just to make you, since you're a fun group, it's Larry Purcell. And just let you know that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm from 21913 Southwest Sherwood Boulevard here in Sherwood. I'm also the pastor of Sherwood New Life Family Center, or the Little White Church that's right across from the development.
Nice.
We saw each other, a few months back with the Springs. Talking to Mr. Fisher about this project as a neighbor, he included us in this. And again, I'm in favor of it as a neighbor. I think it creates a great community. And as was laid out, all of the assets of Old Town and the shopping and all of that, I think something that was just oversighted was the faith community. And there's 2 of us located, 2 different parts of that. I mean, the Catholic Church down the street there, and then us across the street. And I just think, our mission is, and from our church, is to serve from birth to death. And we have an opportunity with the Springs and this new family setting going in. I think it meets Sherwood, what we're talking about. I'm the newcomer. I've been here about 5 years. And one of the things I heard immediately was how the city really wants to make sure Old Town stays alive. And I think this is a great opportunity to do just that, is to keep Old Town alive. And so as far as we are a neighbor, we're all in favor of the project.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Greg Jaco.
We say Jacob, but that's fine.
Jacob. See, I told you, I got 4, and I'm already halfway through pronouncing them incorrectly.
If you were French, you would say Jaco.
Jaco.
My name is Greg Jacot, 23040 Southwest Conifer Drive, Sherwood, Oregon. I've been a resident of Sherwood for 21 years. I have two children that went K through 12 through Sherwood. I am president of Sherwood Main Street, although I'm not representing Sherwood Main Street tonight. I'm representing myself. But as far as Sherwood Main Street goes, we've invited Jim Fisher and Zach to come to our meeting on Thursday morning, our general meeting, and they're going to give a presentation to the merchants and the partners that we have that come to that meeting, and he will give an update then. I have just a few points to make, and none in particular order, but cities and urban areas around the country are going in their downtowns to first floor retail and second floor living spaces. And in Sherwood, we just don't have a lot of upstairs living spaces. By having those extra living spaces, it helps pedestrian traffic and economic development in those areas. That's why they like to have those upstairs. So these townhomes will add to that, the pedestrian traffic and so forth down in Sherwood that we don't have room for up above our buildings. Now, the merchants in Sherwood, I'm sure if you ask them that they would really love to have more people walking around and visiting their shops, eating in the restaurants, and having pastries and painting plates and things like that. So I think if you were to ask the merchants, they would all really love to see more people walking around and attending our events. We have 5 main entrances to Sherwood, and that Oregon Street is one of them. And right now, as people come in, it's kind of unclear that when they actually enter Old Town. And if we could clean that area up where the current Fisher lot is and the tree, that would look wonderful, especially because they're keeping the Old Town codes and everything. That would be a great time to go, oh, now we're in Old Town. And hopefully we'd have some signage out there to that effect. By having these people here, you're talking 25 units, and maybe there's 3 or 4 per unit. So we're really only talking about 100 people, right? But these people bring in grandparents, families, and friends to Sherwood. And I'll tell you an anecdotal story is grandparents from Michigan kept coming to Sherwood to visit their daughter, and they eventually moved into the Hunter Ridge. They bought a place over there, and he brought his business in, joined the Chamber of Commerce. So even by just having 100 extra people here, it brings in aunts and uncles to the events, and the Old Town Halloween's just going to be a real kick down here after that. And also what it does by building up the pedestrian traffic and the economic development in the area, we would have merchants lined up to lease or to buy places to do business in Sherwood, and that's something that we look forward to, as having no vacancies and a high occupancy rate for merchants and everything. So that was all the comments I have, and I'm a proponent of the project. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. I know.
I think you should just try to mispronounce it as best as you can.
Well, Jamie O'Halloran. O'Halloran.
I'm Jamie O'Halloran, and I live at 22555 Southwest Highland Drive. So I'm in Cannery Row Apartments right over there. I've actually only been in the community for about a year and a half. My husband and I sold our home, moved up here while we're building another one. Love it. Love walking the Old Town, and just the whole community is fabulous. What I'm here to speak specifically, though, is on the porches, the balconies, and just that, I think he described it as a third space. And it's been one of the best parts of living over there in Cannery Road, just having that, because it really does build community. We're right across from where Saturday Market is, and people are walking by on Saturdays, and just all the time we get to just sit out on our little front porch and just visit with people, and have loved having that extra space. And when the grandkids are over, it gives them a little bit of an outdoor space that's close enough that I can watch them. They can play right there, and they bring all the blocks out. And so just really love that extra space right there in the front. So I wanted to speak that's a great idea that I'm glad he's putting those in, hopefully.
All right. All right, thank you very much. Gary Rybeck. Probably Rycheck? Richlick. Oh, I tried twice and I still got it wrong.
4 for 4.
But if Jim Fisher could come back up, because I know how to pronounce that one. Sorry, thank you.
I'm Gary Richlick, 25190 Southwest Grams Ferry Road, Sherwood. Longtime Sherwood resident. I went to Sherwood Middle School and graduated from Sherwood High School as well. I'm also a member of the Sherwood Chamber and the Sherwood Rotary Club. I met Jim several years ago when I joined the Sherwood Rotary, just before our annual tree sale. And somebody asked me, "Can you drive a truck?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess. Why? What's that have to do with Rotary?" Well, we need to go spend 2 days picking up trees, and Jim Fisher's donated 3 dump trucks for us to use, which I thought was wonderful because translated to the amount of money that we made every year to be able to use for high school scholarships and Sherwood City Park projects is either hundreds, if not $1,000 or more dollars that transfer back to the community. So that's my relationship with Jim. So when he called me a few weeks ago and asked me if I'd take a look at his project and consider commenting to the council on it, I said, sure. I only have just one concern. Well, actually 2. One was I was about to get on the brand new Avatar ride at Disney World, and why did I answer the phone? The other was parking in Old Town, not at his facility. But I've been used to just coasting to a stop in Old Town for many years and doing my business and never worrying about parking. Then when I started thinking about it, his people aren't going to drive to Old Town. It's just going to add to the business downtown. So that kind of alleviated any concerns I had. I knew the buildings would be to code and then some coming from Jim. So I told him I'm sure I'd be happy to come put in my 2 cents. And that's why I'm here tonight. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, does anybody else wish to testify tonight? I don't have any more blue cards, but again, we like to give people an opportunity. If you have any comments or like to speak this evening, you can come up and, all right, then we will ask the applicant he has 13 minutes of rebuttal to come back up to rebut and or answer our questions. And I can say Jim Fisher, so I know that one.
Nailed it.
Just want to say thanks again for your time and all of your staff's hard work in helping us get through this process. We don't really have anything we want to respond to at this time. So I guess we'll open up to any questions if you have them,
Yep.
or just sit back down.
I have a couple questions. I don't know if anybody else does before we close public. Do you have, Russell, my hero?
I have some questions.
I do too, but I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
Do you want to go first?
No.
Okay. My first question is on the photometric plan. I noticed in our packet the space between building 5 and 6. It looks like the space between building 3 and 4. It says LP2. That's probably some kind of a side-mounted, building-mounted light. That's a walkway, so I can see why you'd want that. And there's a street light or whatever LP1 at the southern part of the space between building 2 and 3. But between building 5 and 6, I realized maybe there's going to be landscape across the front and a fence at the back. But it looks like it's still accessible because kids could still get through the shrubbery into that space. And I don't see plans for a light or something. Are there windows? Is there a plan for lighting in that space?
I'm going to actually ask John Christensen to come up and respond to that question. So,
Because I think that's part of the pedestrian pathway, too.
Nope, not that. Not between building 5 and 6.
Oh, 5.
The landscape plan has like Oregon grapes across the front, kind of blocking it off.
Yeah.
And there's a fence at the other end, and it's bark mulch. But it's clearly space.
It is space because they're required to have 5 foot of
5 foot in between
space between the 2 buildings.
Yeah.
So it is.
I'm just curious about lighting.
So you're looking at the space in between the 2 rear units here.
5 and 6. Yep.
We don't propose any lighting in there at this time. There are windows on the units in between.
What's at the back end of that? Is that fence?
Correct.
What
yeah.
kind of fence is that going to be?
ODOT rail is requiring chain link or wrought iron, so it's one of those two options.
So which one is it going to be? You don't know yet? I saw that in the ODOT. I saw that as the attachment. Certainly the wrought iron looks nicer than the...
I don't want to commit today.
Right, I know.
Obviously, we're leaning toward wrought iron. So, there's other steel in the building.
Right.
And it would accent that as well.
It would look
As far as
awesome.
lights go, those are the kind of things that we'll add as we're building. I could see a couple sensor lights.
Something.
Something like that.
Yeah, if something wanders back there, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Those type, the management companies that would manage as far as would,
Right.
say,
Okay.
hey, put some lights out here for security.
Yeah, well, because there's one in that other, on the pathway between 3 and 4, there just wasn't anything planned for between 5 and 6. And if that's an open space and, people need a place to go smoke or go relax or go, they could be walking back there, it could be dark, it could be something they could trip over. I just feel like maybe that's a hazard. Could be potentially with no light. So,
Is the fence flush with the building? That's what I was trying to figure out.
no, it's like 2 feet or 4 feet
Okay,
from the back.
Okay, that was what I was trying to figure out, because the question earlier was how far it was from the railroad. Then I saw 2 foot and 4 foot markings, so the fence is 2 to 4 feet from the edge of the building, which is then, looks like 20 or 30 feet from the railroad track itself. Is that true?
Yeah, the profile of the rear of the building does articulate, and so it's as close as 2 feet to the property line, or in some cases, step back to 4 feet. So.
And the fence is right on that property line, right? Is that correct? So when people go out the back door, I'm trying to envision going out on the back patio. They're going to have 4 feet of patio and the fence, and then, I don't know, X number of feet until you get to the railroad tracks?
The 2 feet would be actually between the patio and the fence. So you'd have.
Where? I don't see, that's not on my plan.
So that's what's confusing, because if you look at,
There's
Can I
a
just
solid,
clarify
maybe the
something?
fence is not on here.
There's a current fence that's already out there, and it's not
Right.
on the property line. It's set back on the property line, and ODOT Rail requested that a fence be put on the property line. And so the condition of approval is written in such a way that says they either need to put a new fence on the property line as required, or provide us with documentation from ODOT that the existing fence that's already there is sufficient. So there is a fence that's already there. It is wrought iron, and the purpose of the fence is to prevent people from running across
Right.
from these properties onto the railroad tracks.
Okay,
So
kinda-
it provides flexibility on them working that out with.
but that's the perfect
rail.
picture. That's,
Yeah, can you zoom out just a little bit? Not so much in? Zoom out.
Oh, the little, that must be
Yeah,
the fence.
what I'm looking at then is go a little more to the west, towards the city. No, there you go. So there's there's a change in the fence line. Yeah, see how the city's fence is there, and then the Fisher fence, it kind of goes down. Where's the fence going to be? Is it going to be replacing the current one?
So that's up to work out with them and ODOT.
So it's
It will
not
either
right up
stay where it
against,
is,
it's not right up
or it
against.
will be relocated to right up against the property line.
The property line's the
There's
black
about a
dotted
99
line.
About a 99% chance the fence will stay where it is. We've been using that property from the railroad since 1985. When we purchased the property, that fence was up. We rebuilt it at that time. And we've had several conversations with ODOT. They do not want to sell it, but they've given us permission to use it. My plan at this point is to use it. And to do that, we'll obviously need to get it in writing for the fence so we can satisfy your requirement.
So the property line is the dashed line, and the one with the little X's is your existing fence. And you think the fence is, your plan currently is to get a letter from ODOT that fence is going to remain where it is.
Letter from the railroad.
Railroad, what did I say?
Or a lease, yeah.
ODOT rail, correct.
ODOT rail.
Yeah, it says
right.
ODOT. Our letter's from ODOT, sorry, but it's
I've
the
had
railroad.
several conversations over the years with them, and the only reason they won't sell that to me is because if they ever tip a train over, which at this point they're not even using those
Right.
tracks, but if they ever do tip a train over, they have to have that area to upright it. So
Okay.
that's the only reason they won't sell it. Otherwise, if they do condemn the tracks or decide not to reopen it, then that would be an opportunity for me to purchase it. And at this point, what it'll probably get is just a lease. They lease all the time, those right-of-ways.
Okay, but we're correct in assuming that the dashed line's the property line and this
The X's,
the
that's the
X's
fence.
are the fence then, right?
Just to clarify that the property line is 2 to 4 feet behind.
Buildings. Okay, yeah, that's the
This is the
actual property.
property
This is ODOT property down here that he was talking about.
Correct.
This is ODOT.
Oh, okay.
And the property line ends there. So are you envisioning then a second fence closer to the building?
No, unless required by someone in the future.
Okay, so now that opens up a whole landscaping question. What's going to happen beyond the 2 feet to the end of that chain link fence? Is that going to be?
Grass.
That's not part of this plan because it's not part of the property.
Correct.
And it's not included in the percentages for open space.
Right, which
But
is
right
fine.
now, it's just a benefit.
And they couldn't count it as
Right.
open space, even
Right.
if they had
Right.
a lease, because they don't own it, and it could be taken away at any time.
Yep, no, I'm not-
We've been
I'm not worried about
aggressively
that.
using that land since 1986.
I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about safety and, those kinds of things on the back side. And as long as there is a safe, secure fence, because that strip is wide enough to get a bicycle going up good and fast along that edge, even if it's on grass. And so that fence is going to need to be, pretty secure. So
I just want to clarify that there is a fence there currently.
have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's a little dilapidated over there. But it's a fence. It's a fence.
So there is a fence, and they'll have to comply with that requirement.
Okay. All right, that clears up a lot of, I just wasn't understanding all that. I have more questions.
Nope.
Is that okay? All right,
Yeah,
so, let's see. Okay, so the garbage, I think according to Pride, there's not going to be an enclosure. Everybody's going to get a rolling cart.
Correct.
Right, and it's not an official street. It's kind of like a drive area. And I noted on the plans that where the drive area and the driveways are, it's going to be flush. So there will be some curb somewhere in there. It says rolling curb, right? So in the fire department's letter, they indicated that there would be no parking anywhere except for designated parking spaces. So if visitors, it opens up another question. If visitors come over, there are X number of parking spaces. So if their parking spaces are filled and it's trash day or fire happens, this is a CCNR issue. Is that what you're anticipating? I know that Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue District said that was going to be painted, had to be painted red, the curb and all that. What's your kind of plan for managing that area there in the middle?
The plan for managing, preventing people from parking on
Right.
the road?
Mm-hmm.
Currently, my wife and I own 2 other subdivisions, and with private streets. And the narrow street, that'll be a narrow street between the 2 buildings, works quite well because there's just not ample room to park on it. We do paint the curbs. We meet the fire department and the city's requirements. We'll paint the curbs. We'll put up the no parking signs. But there's just no room to park. They'll park in the additional parking spots allotted.
Got it.
How long are the driveways?
15.
15 and a half feet. So you have parking in the garage and then in one spot in the driveway, which we don't count the driveways as a parking spot, do we?
Correct, because they were short of the code required depth. So there's opportunity there for compact use.
Outside of the parking provided, where, if there were additional parking needed by residents or guests, is the expectation that they would be filling this lot, or is the street across that leads to the Springs and the Catholic Church, is that a street that?
Public street or private street?
Yeah.
They would do what every other residential subdivision in the city does and have to find legal parking in the city on street or in a public parking lot, which we've got a project proposed for First Street that's not too far from here. That's a city project that would be converting that vacant space right now to a public parking lot with 19 spaces that would be available. There's parking in the Sherwood Center for the Arts that's public. There's parking along the streets in downtown. There's another parking area on the far side of Old Town that is a park and ride designated area as well. So every single family home in the city has that same issue when people come to visit them. This is different because they're actually providing more parking than you would have in a standard single family.
Right.
But so the street leading to the Springs and and the Catholic Church. Is that a private?
That's a private
That's a
street.
private
That is a
street.
private
It's not a
street.
Yeah,
public
the Catholic
street.
Church.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we do not enforce anything on that street.
The graphic for the garage has two pictures. That means it's double depth, like comparable to a two-car garage, but by depth.
Correct. On the units in the back, it's, dimensionally doesn't meet two full depth stalls, so we didn't count it as two stalls when we did our parking count. But yeah, it's sufficient.
Thank you.
Oh, can I ask a question of staff before.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'm just
or
going processing.
whoever's
They've answered a
18
lot of my questions.
18% open space. It appeared that you were counting the square footage for the commercial building. Is that
Yes, that's how it appears, because there isn't anything planned for that, and there's nothing approved. There is no commercial building approved. So in the future, they would have to come in and get site plan approval, and we would look at that they are not diminishing the open space that is required for the residential.
because it's still going to be one parcel?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was clear. Okay.
When the minimum is 5%.
Yes.
So even if that were to get built up, it should still remain
It
well
appears
over
that
5.
it would be feasible.
Okay.
Okay, building 1, the west elevation that faces this lot. Our renderings have windows on the lower level, and I think the PowerPoint presentation didn't have any windows on that lower level, the three-dimensional drawings. So I'm wondering, I'm just thinking about what separates this lot and people parking and the people living in that first unit. Are you going to have windows? Is the fence? Because right now the building is the fence. So are we going to continue that fence?
But they don't have windows on the first floor. They just have them on the second one.
Yeah, but in our drawings there are windows on the first floor, on the west elevation.
Oh.
I can answer. There's also landscaping proposed there.
Finally got the last guy to come up here.
Because there's 5 feet, so I know there's going to be landscaping,
Right.
right?
There's a row of trees
But is
that are
there-
proposed there as well.
So is it just that, or is there a fence, or they can continue that fence that's kind of around the lot, or what's the plan?
What's the plan? My name is Sinan Gümüşoğlu, talking about pronunciation or difficult names.
And thank you
Could
for
be
not
with that.
I was going to say thank you for not turning in a blue card, because there is no way I got that one.
Correct. So the entrance, you have a flex room and a landing. There's a little window at the downstairs. And then there's a little window that opens to the little kitchenette area at the lower level, just the 2 little windows. And up above, you got the landings and living room. You got windows as well. And remember, just what you said, 4 elevations for architecture. That's what we've done to have little eyes back to the city hall, essentially. And then upstairs, we got windows in the bedrooms and the hallway as well. Correct. It's not a blank situation.
Oh, yeah. No, I wasn't asking about that. I was
And
asking
now we got
about.
a stone, but up to 3 feet high at the lower level as well.
So I was asking about privacy. So, so on that lower level, the facade that faces this building, there will be a couple of small windows, unlike your rendering here. But it's just that little kitchenette and the utility room. All right, not a living space.
Correct.
And then, in addition to that, there'll be landscaping.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
But is anybody going to continue that fence? Is the city planning on continuing the fence across, or?
Yeah, as far as I understand, we're going to have a fence coming down there as well.
Between this
Between the-
property and
yes.
that property? Okay. I don't see fence on there,
It's
but,
not shown on the plans.
I think that's to be determined yet.
okay. Yeah, right now, the building is the dividing, but there's this,
We have not determined that.
okay.
But does there need to be a fence?
I
No,
don't believe we
I'm just
require
wondering-
one.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's,
I think there'll be landscaping, and at the end of the day, if it's something that needs to be, or whatever.
Yeah, landscape plans actually shows a lot of landscaping along the edge.
yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
Yes.
I think of this more of a pedestrian-friendly area.
It'll be a cut through so that the residents can get to the library.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. It'll be, instead of going out to the pathway, they're cutting through the parking lot I don't know if that's a safety issue for the city engineer. Maybe it's not, so maybe it isn't. And whatever landscaping is right there will be killed, so you walked on all the time.
I imagine that Phil, the guy doing our landscaping, will put some little.
Adjust. Okay, now I have questions about along the public pathway here when Oregon Street was taken out, or First Street and 4th Street and Oregon Street were merged, you know. I love this pedestrian pathway, and now as we walk past what used to be your building, there'll be like 5 units, and there is some grass, and then there's, you know, some landscaping, and then there are the units, the front doors of the units. So are the CCNRs going to control how that area is maintained? My thought is, what if one neighbor, you know, is gone for a month and their grass grows to, you know, 11 inches, and then the next neighbor is, are they mowing their own, or is that going to be maintained? It's just right
The
next to
CCNRs
the...
will definitely take care of the maintenance of all the landscape.
So probably, are you anticipating like some company's just going to come do it all, and then everybody just contributes?
Yes.
So it's not like individuals have to have a mower and try to mow their 12 feet of grass?
Correct.
Okay, excellent. I love that. That's great.
Be done by professional landscape.
I bet you know a couple too. Another question about, again, I really trying to envision how this was going to react, or, you know, be right there along Oregon Street. I really like the idea, and I like what she said about the Canterbury Row apartments. Another concern might be, and this might be a CCNR issue, you know, noise, extra loud noise coming from an apartment out into the public space, or people hanging laundry off of their balcony, or storing items on their balcony that, you know, and has that been thought about? I mean, it's kind of, you know, Mr. Jaycott called it, you know, one of the entrances to Sherwood, and I hate to have, you know, I don't know, stuff hanging off the front of those beautiful buildings. Has that been thought about?
We really haven't got into that
Yeah.
depth yet, but as we look, our goal right now is to keep them and rent them, and we've been working with a rental management company that is excellent at picking tenants and making sure those things don't happen.
All right.
We do have other rentals, and we're able, you know, I'm able to say that you can take care of all those concerns with just making good choices.
Okay.
Right.
I
But
like
as the property changes hands, the CCNRs are what we as a commission can look at to say that in the document, the original intent was that the patios remain free of excessive debris.
Right.
So,
I mean, sometimes they're treated like second garages. You know, there's like all this
We
stuff
can
out there.
address all that in CCR.
Right.
CCNRs would be
so
happy to do that.
I don't know if we need to have clarified to staff that within the CCNRs, we would want to make sure that the patio and decks maintenance is addressed and leave it at the discretion of staff to review the CCNRs. We do know that at this time, the city of Sherwood does not enforce CCNRs, but if in the future something egregious were to happen, at least we've done our due diligence when ownership changes and policies within the city are there. We've done our tasks. So
that's it.
Because I was going to address that garbage cans, because that was part of the staff report, that the garbage cans had to be put out and then
Put in the garage.
stored in the
Yeah.
garage. And so looking towards staff to have some sort of condition of approval within the final report that accommodates review of the CCNRs to include those 2 items, the patio and decks being free of maintenance, and that the garbage cans are properly stowed between pickups.
Gene, would we, because there's the lawn area that's along at least this portion along the promenade, should we include language about the lawn area along with the patios and decks?
I think that's part of the, I don't know how that works. I think it's part of the conditions.
Okay.
What is it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, maintenance of the site in accordance with the approved plan is an ongoing requirement for site plans and these types of things. So that certainly could be covered within the CCNRs, but we do have the ability, if something is completely changed from what was originally approved to go after them from a code compliance standpoint.
It includes landscape
requirements,
maintenance standards, any and all common open space, water quality.
So we're just adding patios and decks to
Right,
that.
because
Yeah.
because patios and decks and the garbage cans are not common areas. So that's a little bit different than, landscaping and common areas are easy because it's already in their code, but someone's private patio managing that would have to be under the CCNRs because we can't control what someone puts on their own deck.
Yeah.
As a city.
So what exactly are we wanting on the patios and decks?
Not laundry.
Well,
I'm sorry, I'm fun.
I don't know how particular we can be.
I don't
We
know.
can't.
I'm trying to tie it to something in code. I mean, we
Right,
certainly,
right.
But not in code, it's in their CCNRs.
In code, we've got CCNRs in there. I just want to make sure that we're not requiring something that we wouldn't require of any other single-family home in Sherwood.
True.
So if someone went to the splash pad and played and had their towel drying on their rack, are we now prohibiting that in the CCNRs? I mean, I don't know how detailed we want to get, and I'm not sure that we have that
I'm just trying to figure out.
ability to do that.
I'm just like, well, I was thinking more of the garbage cans first. I don't know what my community has within it, but I thought you had to have your can pulled within a day in most neighborhoods. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well,
or the overwhelming guilt of my neighbor already is what
I
keeps
certainly
me-
agree that this is not necessarily something we can regulate because we're not condominium park owners. But I think the key here, and I think Mr. Fisher is keenly aware of this, is that's such a great piece of property, and it's such a great entrance to the city of Sherwood, and it's going to really be nice right across the street from when the Springs gets their facility. It's going to be beautiful, just beautiful at this end of the city. So I don't know how particularly you can regulate those kinds of things. I just wanted to bring to mind, the concept to the applicant so that when they draft their CCNRs, they can figure out what they want to do, whatever they want to do. I don't think there's anything we can do, but I wanted to broach the
I just want
subject.
to make sure if we were changing the condition of approval, and that condition of approval is B1, which says prior to final site plan approval that they have to submit a copy of the proposed CCNRs and homeowners association agreement for our review so that we can catch that. So if there was something that
That's
needed to be there, I
good
wanted to
for
make
me.
sure we captured that, and then I wanted to make sure that we are treating this single-family attached
Right.
product the same way we would treat any other single-family product in the city, and that we're being fair and equitable. And in terms of nuisances and eyesores, we have property maintenance code within
Right.
municipal code, that if people are doing things egregious, that code compliance can go out and address that.
Right.
So I wondered if there was something you wanted to propose to change that condition of approval, I wanted to know what that was so I could actually
No,
accurately
that's
capture
not what
it.
I'm saying. What I'm saying is if the railroad track was in there and that was a PUD going in there, I would be just as interested on how those units look right up against one of our major streets. It wouldn't make a difference what it is. Apartments, townhomes, single-family homes, I don't care. It's where it is. And what we can do inside the code, let's do. And I think they've done a great job. I think the units look great. Yeah. And if it's in the code that they have to submit that for review, I think I'm fine with that.
And I think the intent is just to prevent eyesores is like that. I think that's really the best word for it. So if there's a path or avenue for that remedy already, then I think that's the concern. So
I don't want to get into further defining eyesores at this point in time. That would be my preference and my recommendation to you, but
That's fine.
I don't think we
have
need to.
municipal code
All right.
Yeah.
for the egregious things.
All right. I had one more question, and one of your renderings, sorry, not yours, the landscapers, the street tree wells, I am just wanting to know how is it going to be different than what it is currently? You said you're adding something to the existing. Currently, the sidewalks are really nice in that they're wide and you can get strollers, walkers, and bikes all going through. And if we're making it narrow because we're adding street trees, I just want to see how it looked. And I saw one of the renderings that one of the presentations that narrowed the sidewalk down by that. I just want to know, is that true?
It should look similar to what they showed in their renderings, and if you walk around Old Town, it will look like the existing streets in Old Town, where we have that already.
but it's not going to look like what it is right now, which is
Well,
very
what it is
wide
right
and
now
open.
has no trees.
Right.
Unless you want to say they don't have to provide street trees, and you have
Here it
the,
is.
you have the
Yes.
ability to do that in code. I just did not think that was something that the commission was supportive of, not having street trees like
Yeah.
we have elsewhere. But certainly you can exempt them from that condition and that standard in code if you did not want them to do that.
No, but I just want to scale. So the sidewalk's still going to be 4 feet wide, or
And how wide is the sidewalk? The
and
one
so
on facing Oregon Street?
Currently 12 feet.
Oh, wow, that is great.
it's great. And then we're going to
That's so
reduce.
great.
Yeah, because you don't have people, and so then we're adding 4-foot trees. So we still have plenty.
You'd still have
plenty of
it still
space.
exceeds.
So that, I was just trying to get
Exceeds the
scale and
sidewalks in
proportion.
Old Town.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
So even after that bump out is reduced, it will still maintain roughly that dimension.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and
I'm just curious, Jim, where's the playground that you mentioned that
Well,
you're
there's 3 different possibilities.
okay?
And we're going to wait until we, get a little bit further into determine.
Okay.
It'll either be over in the, I'm going to call it the southwest corner, or it'll be where the office is now temporarily, and then it'll be behind that commercial pad.
Okay.
Is where we originally had it drawn.
Okay.
But because that's phase 2, and actually the trees were kind of thrown, the street trees were thrown in kind of in the 9th inning. And I think it's a great question. And, our landscaper does an awesome job with the landscaping. And we were actually, do the street trees, we're not opposed to putting in the street trees. But I think it's a good question to think about for a second. You may not want the street trees there with the landscape. We have a nice landscaping plan there, and it's going to look good. And if the street trees are going to actually crowd that sidewalk, I know that was one of Bob's concerns, and we were moving our lights out of the way because of that. So maybe we're.
I
think if it's 12 now, removing 4 out of it still leaves plenty of sidewalk to allow for the street trees.
I do too. I didn't know what the end was going to be by reducing and then adding trees. If we were going to be cutting it down to 3 foot or something like that, that was going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Which it's not going to be. It's
Right.
going to be an appropriate width once we're done. Even if we remove some of the sidewalk and put in the street trees, I think it's still an appropriate width. So, but this will help shade the buildings in the summertime too. I would like to compliment you on making buildings that look like they're really going to fit into the community. I
Yeah.
think it's going to complement what's going to be going on across the other side. I don't recall how tall the other building's going to be, but around 30 stair
3
step back to
stories, yeah.
40 feet. So yours is right in the middle, because height is going to be something when people first start seeing these get built, they go, it's so tall. But if we start looking at what's allowed and what you're going to be across the street from, and all the amenities that are being brought into it, and hopefully getting to a critical mass that really continues to invigorate Old Town, this is, I think, a wonderfully done project. And I want to thank you guys for bringing it in and then allowing us to ask a lot of questions at the end, just to make sure that we're all clear and understanding what we're going to be seeing when we get the actual buildings built in front of us. So thank you.
Well, we've had some really great help. You're welcome. And between Sanon and Zach and John, they've been awesome to work with and have helped a lot with this.
Thank you. Is there any more questions of the applicant before we close the public hearing? All right. Thank you very much. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and close the public testimony and ask any further questions of staff before we go on. And I would first like to compliment staff on the additions of the links from what's happening in the staff report to the actual conditions of approval that has been years, things that I have been doing one for one, dotting them back and forth to follow the track. And this that is extremely helpful. It makes a huge difference when you're reading the staff report and going back and going, oh, there it is, it's C2. And thank you very much for doing that.
Good. I hope to make that easier to read, and if we have questions, then it helps easier to find them in the staff report as well.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know if we didn't formally make any changes to
I don't
any
think
of
so.
the conditions. We've accepted the staff's recommended changes, and the applicant was in agreements with that. And I don't know if we have any further questions of staff. Then do we have a motion?
I have a motion.
All right.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for Oregon Street Townhomes SP 16-09 and CUP 16-04, based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report.
As revised.
Did we revise it?
No, the staff revised it at the beginning of the meeting.
As revised.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve SP 1609 and CUP 16-04 Oregon Street Townhomes. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, last order of business is Planning Commissioner announcements. And I had a couple of notes that I don't want to lose track of, and I'm not going to ask staff to have an answer, but things that are on my agenda items that I think we just don't want to lose track of is what was brought before us last meeting by a citizen, which is the Roy Rogers project that Washington County is going to be doing, and an update on whether we've gotten a link from Washington County and an update on the city page about that project. And then I read the Police Advisory Committee's minutes, and they were talking about the same thing that has come before us on many occasions, which is traffic calming. And Julia's nodding her head because she knows it's a project that's come before us, and that we just need to find a path by which citizens can feel their voices being heard and a solution is available when they have an expressed concern about speed in their area and what the solutions are available to them. So having read it in the Police Advisory minutes, they are also taking that up as an agenda item. So I don't know what opportunities are available to us, but I just know that that gets brought to us enough that I want to keep it as a hot topic that we can talk about.
And if I can add, and actually I'm glad our council liaison is here as well. That is something that comes up, and as I've mentioned, we sort of struggle with what we have and what we don't have, and we certainly can do a better job of explaining the process to the public of what we do have, but there's a lot of what we don't. In terms of process and making it really clear and easy to apply and go through a process. That said, the council actually just discussed this at their last work session at a beginning level in terms of this is an issue with no parking sign requests, and Joe Gall, the city manager, has sort of teased that we do need to be having more of a conversation about neighborhood traffic management and a more formal program. So I think that's going to be something that continues to be discussed. So I appreciate you continuing to raise it. I'm glad that the Police Advisory Board is having those conversations as well, and we might have much more to talk to you guys about in the coming months as we're finally tackling the discussion a little bit more. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would say that is something that did also come up in our council goals that we talked about. We hear the same feedback from the citizens. I've had several people contact me in my current role as a counselor and also in my previous role on the Police Advisory Board. That was something we heard fairly regularly. How do we contact the police? People are speeding on my road. People are blowing stop signs. So I think it sounds like at this point now we've got 3 boards and commissions and 2 boards and commissions in the council. It's all on our radar. So we're all certainly.
How do you solve it at a application standpoint and then at a time when a citizen's coming to you? And those are questions that I feel inadequate when someone comes to me and says, guys, and there's two things. One of them is it's your neighbor, walk down, I live on a cul-de-sac and it's my neighbor, I can look at him in the eye and say, there's 5 little kids over here, what do you, slow down? Versus we've got a couple of streets that are cut-through streets that need to be addressed differently than a neighborhood street. So
it's difficult. I live right over by Snyder Park, and so we cross there at Alder Grove, and the city's put in the flashing stop signs and the flashing warning stop ahead signs, and yet you still see people go through that stop sign repeatedly. So it's a matter of public outreach and awareness of common courtesy in driving, but there's also some aspects of planning as well, and getting some signage out. I think the city's done a great job of adding some crosswalks lately to some dangerous intersections. So we're definitely on board with what you're saying as well.
All right, excellent. Any other planning commissioner announcements? All right, if there are no other items, I would call that we adjourn the meeting. I don't know how you officially do it other than say, I adjourn. We're not going to vote on it, so thank you very much.